Buongiorno a tutti. Allora, oggi siamo qui per raccontare di quanto il Cremlino stia rafforzando la censura, reprimendo i media indipendenti e soffocando la libertà di stampa e ogni forma di dissenso. Abbiamo qui oggi la testimonianza di Oksana Chelysheva, è una giornalista russa, è stata collaboratrice della Novaya Gazeta, testata storica per la quale ha lavorato con Anna Politkovskaya. È stata premiata nel 2006 da Amnesty International per il suo impegno verso tematiche riguardanti i diritti civili e la Chelysheva è stata costretta proprio per le repressioni del regime putiniano a esiliare in Finlandia. Nel 2015 ho avuto l'onore di premiarla con il premio Pimentel Fonseca. Sono molto legata a Oksana perché è stata la prima ospite proprio di Imbavaiati quando è nato Imbavaiati. Dico brevemente, Imbavaiati è un festival che dà voce a quei giornalisti che hanno sperimentato la censura, il bavaglio, le persecuzioni, i regimi dittatoriali. Nonostante questo continuano a raccontare la verità e soprattutto la realtà dal punto di vista interno. Allora, Oksana, buongiorno, ben rivista. Noi ci sentiamo spesso sui social. Lei ogni giorno, in questi giorni, si sta battendo molto per l'Ucraina, posta continuamente video, foto di persone che subiscono attentati, dà voce attraverso il suo lavoro, illumina le persone più deboli. Allora, Oksana, innanzitutto volevo chiederti, tu sei stata costretta ad esiliare in Finlandia, ci racconti quel periodo, che cosa accadde in quegli anni?
Well, thank you, and so I would like to start with sending my warm heart gratitude towards Napoli and Imbavaliati, because not because of just recognition, but also because when we manage to meet, I always feel the atmosphere of genuine discussions, of genuine interest to learn more, to understand the situation. And also, you don't forget to be in touch with people who you invite after the festivals are over. And that's very important, to stay in contact with the people on the ground and to follow on their situation. With regard to this question, it happened in 2008, in March. I was about to go back home to Nizhny Novgorod when I got a telephone call from one of my colleagues from a mainstream media, and they warned that I'd rather stay in Finland, postpone my coming back. They warned me of the imminent danger of being targeted first, because of also my contacts from with outside Russia. They told me that you would be silenced first, because no information would be coming via you if it happened. So I stayed in Finland. I didn't ask for asylum first. I really postponed my coming back. And then I postponed it 5 more times. And then my Finnish friends, they told me, okay, it seems already kind of stupid. How many times you are going to postpone the trip back home? And they also told me that if I had made the decision to go back to Russia, they would have understood me. I have my family there, I have my daughter there, but it would be very difficult for them to help more people, because they would need to concentrate the effort on me. So the Finnish Pen Center made the decision to support my staying in Finland. And the first 5 years I stayed there as the Finnish Pen Center guest writer. But then it happened so that I went to Italy, it was Perugia, the International Festival of Journalism. And on the way to the festival, my Russian passport was stolen with the Finnish residence permit. So I remained kind of trapped in Italy. And Italy could help me by, the only thing Italy could do is to organize my coming back to Russia. So Finland rescued me again. I got a possibility to return to Finland from Italy without any documents. And only after that, I had to ask for asylum. And now I'm a political refugee in Finland. So that's in brief. And the thing is that there was a very specific reason why I was picked up for punishment. And it was my work on Chechnya, but not only. It was my personal attempt to interfere into the siege in Beslan by mediating with those Chechen leaders who condemned the act of terrorism already on the 1st of September. And I did that because on the 1st of September 2004, I also got a message from Moscow, from the Novaya Gazeta, that Anna Politkovskaya and Andrei Babitsky were not, so to say, permitted to reach Beslan. And these two people, both of them, Anna Politkovskaya and Andrei Babitsky, they were the only possibility to actually mediate, not just to wait until the disastrous results, but to mediate and to try to save lives. Unfortunately, Anna was poisoned on the plane, and Andrei, there was a provocation against him, so he was not permitted to go there. So I made that effort, and in full understanding that there would be consequences to me. But for me, journalism is not only giving data on the victims, but it's also a very important tool to influence the situation in the interests of the people.
Allora, volevo ringraziare Oksana Chelysheva per tutto quello che ha detto sui Bavariati. Per noi è venuta 3 volte al festival e per noi è sempre veramente interessante tutto quello che ci dice, tra l'altro anticipando dei temi come fece nel 2016, dove tutto quello anche con Babitsky che sarebbe accaduto in Ucraina veniva purtroppo già anticipato, e lei parlava all'epoca anche dei 2 Andrea, come li chiamavano all'epoca. Volevo chiedere che cosa ha fatto e continua a fare la censura russa in questi anni?
Well, I suppose that Russian censorship works as any kind of censorship by via different channels, also legislative physical harassment, threats, and also media campaign of those outlets which are loyal to them, propaganda tools. But I need to emphasize that after February 24th, after Russia attacked Ukraine in a full-scale war, which is, by the way, prohibited to be described as the war inside Russia, because this is a special operation. So the situation has got not just critical, but it has come to their full destruction of any media outlets which are not controlled by the Kremlin. To continue, so I took it seriously to be part of your meeting today, and on Friday and on Saturday I had communication with some of my Russian colleagues and also Finnish colleagues, and actually the example of the Novaya Gazeta is very clear with regard to the level of threat for the media right now in the context of the war. You know that Novaya Gazeta, as the Russian media outlet, had to freeze their coming because of the threats that they would be labeled as a foreign agent. And they established an absolutely new media outlet registered in Latvia, which is the Novaya Gazeta in Europe. So when I talked, and very important that quite many journalists who worked for the Novaya Gazeta, they had to leave Russia, and now they are based in different countries, not necessarily in the EU. And I would also like to compare the situation of those journalists. Unfortunately, their situation with their almost 100% restrictions on Russians entering Europe, which was introduced by Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. So it has a very negative effect, because, when I talk to my colleagues who are in Russia, you should understand that before, when we didn't see any clear attempts to introduce the notion of collective responsibility back on people, so those who had Schengen visas, those activists, those journalists, those artists who were in the zone of threats, they had the possibility to organize their departure from Russia in a matter of a day. Right now, almost all these people are trapped. It's very difficult to get visas issued. The atmosphere towards any Russian is very hostile. So some people who I talk to, despite their anti-Putin sentiments and their anti-war sentiments, they state very clearly, we refuse to be humiliated, etc., etc., etc. at the same time, and there a number of people actually managed to flee to their former Soviet states, especially in the South Caucasus, like Georgia and Armenia. And I would like to give an example of a very known, very good Russian journalist with the Novaya Gazeta, Jan Shenkman, who is now based in Armenia. Jan Shenkman didn't have the Schengen visa at the time when he had to make a fast decision to leave Russia. And he had no time to ask for a visa. And it was also difficult for him to decide where to go to, because, well, he told me he would like to go, he would have liked to go to Estonia, where he wants and loves a small town of Narva. Fortunately, he didn't make this kind of decision because the situation in Estonia and in the Baltic states towards Russians as such has become very, very sensitive. So Jan Shenkman went to Armenia. And in Armenia, which is a small, impoverished country, also affected by wars and conflicts and instability, the authorities made a decision which helps now such people like Jan Shenkman. According to their law, so all Russian citizens has a visa-free entry to the country, but they have the limit of 180 days to stay in the country. Then they are supposed to leave Armenia. In the situation of peril, of danger, for such people like Jan Shenkman, it wasn't possible to go back to Russia when 180 days expired. He was considering where to go to. And at that time, the authorities of this poor, impoverished country made a decision. Okay, those Russian citizens who are now in the country don't need to leave. If they are registered at their address which they rent out, it's enough. This is already a legal basis for them to stay for the period of their registration.
Volevo chiedere, allora, col corridore che dei Balcani, Caucaso, Transeuropa, mi chiedeva in chat economicamente se molti di questi giornalisti vanno in Turchia, come si fanno a mantenersi economicamente? E io poi volevo fare anche un'altra domanda. In questi giorni a Trento e a Napoli, al sindacato unitario giornalisti in entrambe le città, con Articolo 21 e Imbavagliate, abbiamo fatto un sit-in anche con la famiglia di Mario Paciolla e di Megalizzi per Ivan Safranov. Volevo sapere, è stato incarcerato per 20 anni, che cosa rischia realmente il collega russo, che cosa noi possiamo fare per i giornalisti russi in questo momento, in pratica, che cosa possiamo fare noi italiani, noi europei, per aiutare i giornalisti ucraini e i giornalisti russi? Quindi le domande sono 3, ricapitolando. A proposito di Nicole Corritore, che rappresenta l'Osservatorio Balcani Caucaso Transeuropa, lei domanda se ci sono i giornalisti che arrivano appunto in Turchia e come fanno a
chiedeva quanti sono i giornalisti che hanno lasciato il paese complessivamente, mi pare di capire.
Esatto, quanti sono quelli che hanno lasciato il paese verso quelle zone e che come sopravvivono, ce la fanno di sopravvivere economicamente. Poi volevo sapere che cosa rischia appunto Ivan Safranov, al quale abbiamo dedicato con Articolo 21 due sit-in, è stata la prima manifestazione europea per la Nuova Gazzetta e per il giornalista incarcerato. E l'ultima domanda, appunto, noi europei, noi italiani, che cosa possiamo fare per i giornalisti ucraini e i giornalisti russi e comunque per chiunque rischia nel territorio di guerra di questi giorni, ma soprattutto per i giornalisti russi che sono imprigionati in una terra da dove non possono fuggire in questi giorni.
I can't give you their exact number of journalists who have already left, but following the social channels of various journalists, I can see that people keep leaving. Those who get this opportunity. In this respect, I would also like to draw your attention. We also discussed it with my Russian and Finnish colleagues, that all these good intentions of issuing kind of visas on humanitarian grounds in cases of journalists, for instance, or people who are from opposition circles in Russia. So it has a very dubious, it might have a very dubious negative effect, because, you know, firstly, it's there is no such a thing as a humanitarian visa. So this is kind of a false promise. There are already facts when people from opposition circles actually get refusals to their requests for visas. And I would also like to draw your attention to a person who is not kind of mentioned in the Western media, but his case is very important, we feel. His name is Andrei Zayakin. Actually, this man was one of the chiefs of one of departments of the Novaya Gazeta. He's still in Russia. And Andrei Zayakin was a founder of Discernet online project, which kind of investigated so-called science papers issued or developed by various Russian officials, which were proven to be kind of not fake, but not real science papers. So he's now facing, he's now under criminal investigation. He has been charged with contributing 1,000 rubles to support one of Navalny's project, FBK. So, and in the Russian law, even such a small amount of money, this 1,000 rubles, actually is already interpreted as financing an extremist organization, and this is and this endangers Andrei Zayakin not with just a fine, but with real imprisonment. This is one of their most recent cases. And there are a lot more cases like that. And the most problematic situation is now with journalists who are based in various regions of Russia. Again, so when I looked through different estimates of how many Russian journalists are now under criminal investigations of different types, the data varies because it is still incomplete. But their overall estimate is that from 30 to 50 Russian journalists, mostly the ones who are based in the regions, are now under various types of criminal investigations. Mostly into the charges of them compromising the good name of the Russian army. Well, you have asked a very important questions. How survive those ones who have managed to flee? That's, yeah, I really appreciate this question, because it's very difficult. It's very difficult for most of these people to survive financially. Well, one thing is the journalists who are now working officially in their circles with their media outlets in Latvia, which is now Dost TV station and Novaya Gazeta in Europe. I wouldn't talk about their financial story, because I haven't asked anything about that. But I would like to give you an example. Like here in Finland, there was an attempt to support Novaya Gazeta for many years by publishing their a special edition of Novaya Gazeta in Finnish, which was initially they were booklets, then it was the supplement to the Finnish edition of Le Monde Diplomatique. And in this context, those people who ran those projects, so they decided to help Russian journalists by translating their articles from Russian into Finnish, publishing them in mainstream Finnish media outlets, and getting money for their articles, and sending the money to the journalists directly. I talked to one of the main organizers of this really important effort. Her name is Kertu Matinpuro. And Kertu told me that she is facing herself a dilemma, because those journalists who decide to get their names open in the Finnish media, so they should be aware that it would draw negative attention from the Russian authorities to them. But she tells me that in most cases, people are really eager to continue and to have their word published and to have their name open. That's very important for them. But at the same time, she herself is suffering through this choice, because she, on a human basis, she doesn't want to risk those people's well-being, so to say, because there is no way to help them with visas, there is no way to help them with some kind of stable income. And I also discussed it with Jan Schenkman, because Jan was one of those journalists who got published in Finland within this effort. That's very difficult for them to survive right now, financially. And even the situation of the journalists in Latvia, for instance, those Russian journalists in Latvia, I wouldn't describe as ideal. There was because actually, fortunately, with Novaya Gazeta in Europe, there has been no cases of kind of political pressure upon them. So that's what I haven't heard. But there was a very big scandal in Latvia with regard to Dost TV station, because when they moved to Latvia, and when they launched their work from Riga, so they continued to work in the way they have used to, like also raising difficult questions and not ignoring the situation in their host countries. And there was an attempt to threaten them, which was initiated by the Latvian theater director. His name is Hermanis. Actually, he accused Dost journalists of being pro-Putin because they dared to raise some aspects of Latvian internal politics. They interviewed the mayor of Riga, and so that's what something which they didn't like. So, and there was a very aggressive media campaign initiated by this theater director, by this Hermanis, and he openly proposed that at the time of war, there is no such a thing as neutrality. And if they continue to work like that, so they should leave for another neutral country, which would be Mongolia. And not long ago, I interviewed, well, I would like to give you another example from another country, which is Estonia. Some days ago, I interviewed Philippe Loss. He is a Russian theater director of, and he emphasizes it, of the Jewish background. He used to be their chief director of the Russian theater of Tallinn, which is the capital of Estonia. Absolutely anti-war, anti-Putin person, like, so there is no doubt about that. But in one of his posts in Facebook, Philippe raised this anti-Russian sentiments as such. He raised their collective responsibility as one of the main problems right now. And he was immediately attacked. I do hope that after a number of interviews, also to my media, my Finnish media, which is the Finnish newspaper, it is called the Finnish newspaper in Russian. So the situation around Philippe is a lot more quieter, but that's the problem as such. Russians in some countries, no matter whether we have never voted for Putin, whether we have been critical of quite many aspects of Putin's policies, so we all share responsibility because we don't want to denounce ourselves as Russians.
So you don't see yourself as Russian right now for the situation?
No. Why? My ethnical background has nothing to do, so it is very complex. I was born in Ukraine. My mother is Ukrainian Roma, of also mixed background, because I have Greek blood in my veins. I have Ukrainian blood. I have Roma blood. My father is Russian. So I do identify myself with the Russian culture, and I'm not going to denounce it.
Oksana Chelysheva, essendo una cronista di razza, cioè veramente straordinaria, diciamo non divide il mondo in bianco e nero, ma vede anche i grigi. Allora, nel 2016 a Imbavagliati, con Andrei Babischi, che purtroppo è venuto a mancare, facemmo un focus molto molto interessante, anticipando poi quello che sta succedendo in questo momento in Ucraina. Ma Oksana Chelysheva all'epoca parlava dei due Andrea, così come li chiamavano i colleghi russi, quindi il caso di Rocchelli e Milanov, del quale Oksana Chelysheva si sta occupando, ma con non poche difficoltà, Volevo sapere che cosa sa di questo caso per le sue inchieste e se ci spiega perché ha difficoltà a occuparsene. Grazie.
Well, Andrei Mironov and Enziro Kelly were killed on 24th of May 2014. You definitely know about their trial in Pavia and then the appeal trial in Milan and their situation of Vitaly Markiv. Why it is difficult to work on this case? I would be very straightforward. If Enziro Kelly and Andrei Mironov had been killed by the side of rebels in Slavyansk, no Russian army, there was no Russian army there, but rebels in Slavyansk, yeah, it would have been a very loud case. And they would have been made heroes. Their deaths by the hands of the Ukrainian army, and it is confirmed by the appeal court as well in Milan. I've seen the documents. I know that Vitaly Markiv was released from punishment because of technical reasons. Because even at the time of the case to be moved by the prosecutor's office to the court, so there was sufficient substance and evidence to also accuse his superior officers of giving the command. And this is a notion of the supreme responsibility. Well, again, so their death by the hands of the Ukrainian side, which is confirmed by the appeal court in Milan, is that sensitive, difficult truth, which makes this case so much complex, artificially complex. Because the names of those who gave the order are known. The Italian journalists, truly independent, conducted their investigation, their additional investigation. You had documentaries screened by Rai-3 on the results of the investigation. And still the question remains why it is so difficult. You know, I want to tell that for me, the truth is always clear. You know, so if I was encouraged and awarded for my effort to speak the truth on the situation in Chechnya against the authorities of my state, why anyone would expect that I would change my views, my stance, and I would start to invent convenient stories so that I keep awarded and encouraged and appreciated. It's not going to happen. Andrei Mironov was a very dear friend of mine. He was a colleague of mine. And I know for sure that if anything like that had happened to me, so he would be the one who would insist on telling the truth the way it is. And I would also like to tell about this nickname of two Andreis. It's not my invention. These are the way how people in Slavyansk refer to them. They've accepted both Andrei and Andrea. And so those people who were, these two men were trying to save, so they were calling them two Andreis. And they were telling me during my visits to Slavyansk and my communication to those who came to know Andrei and Andrea, that those two journalists were very different from the majority of journalists who were there in Slavyansk at that time. They were telling me that Andrei and Andrea were allowed to enter people's houses. They were allowed and accepted to stay with them. Local people were helping in their effort. And the reason was that Andrei and Andrea, so they didn't pretend to be something that they were not. Andrei was an anti-Putin person. Andrei was very critical of annexation of the Crimea. Andrei participated in anti-war, anti-Putin rallies. And he was open. He was open with his host in Slavyansk about that. They were telling me that Andrei was telling about the war in Chechnya, which he witnessed. So that's when a person is genuine, they are accepted, no matter how complex they are. And this is a drawback of quite many Italian journalists and politicians to permit Andrea Rocchelli's death to go unpunished.
Allora, volevo ringraziare Oksana per tutte le cose che ci ha detto, tra l'altro dandoci notizie che non avevamo, quindi come per Articolo 21 imbavagliati avere una voce interna dal punto di vista interno, una cronista di razza come Oksana è veramente importante. Adesso Anna Del Freo.
Sì, grazie a tutti, intanto soprattutto a Oksana che ci ha dato tutte queste informazioni e ci ha portato il suo punto di vista. Tra l'altro ringrazio Oksana di aver ricordato qui Andrea Rocchelli, Andrei Mironov, il cui processo abbiamo seguito passo passo insieme ai genitori di Andrea Rocchelli, grazie anche a Beppe Giulietti qui a Milano, e abbiamo manifestato, abbiamo sentito tantissimo questo processo che poi è finito come ha ricordato Oksana. E io volevo appunto parlare un attimo anche della situazione del sindacato dei giornalisti russi. Nella Federazione Europea dei giornalisti, che io dove io faccio parte del board dello steering committee, noi abbiamo avuto, avevamo dentro la Federazione Europea il sindacato russo, che era prima il più grande sindacato russo, il più grande sindacato europeo di giornalisti per numero nella Federazione Europea, ed era la Federazione dei giornalisti russi, RUJ. Purtroppo questo sindacato si è come spento, piano piano si è avvicinato, secondo noi, al potere, a Putin, e quindi ha cominciato a non pagare più le quote al sindacato europeo e ad allontanarsi visibilmente dall'attività sindacale, dalla protezione dei giornalisti russi. Alcuni giornalisti lo hanno anche abbandonato. Nel frattempo è nato un altro sindacato più piccolo e molto più attivo, che è entrato nella Federazione Europea. Si chiama JMWU, cioè Journalist and Media Worker Union. E questo piccolo sindacato è stato molto attivo e diciamo ha raccolto anche delle persone indipendenti. Ed è cosa è successo a questo piccolo sindacato? È successo che è stato praticamente chiuso, è stato sospeso, la sua attività è stata sospesa perché è stato accusato intanto di aver scritto praticamente quasi all'inizio della guerra, basta guerra, quindi di essersi espresso contro, e poi è stato accusato di avere pubblicato un documento che era stato prodotto al Festival del giornalismo di Perugia, è stato prodotto un documento in difesa dei giornalisti che vanno in guerra, tanto russi quanto ucraini, quindi un manifesto che invocava protezione per i giornalisti in guerra. È bastato la pubblicazione di questo manifesto per accusare il sindacato di attività antigovernative, e quindi alla luce delle nuove leggi che, come sapete, sono durissime, prevedono fino a 15 anni di carcere per tutti coloro che gettano discredito sulle forze armate, e quindi parlano della guerra in Ucraina in sostanza, quindi la censura è questa. È bastato questo per farlo accusare di attività anti-forze armate russe, e in pratica c'è stata una prima udienza, intanto è stata sospesa l'attività, poi c'è stata una prima udienza il 4 di agosto e ci sarà un'altra udienza il 14 di settembre, quindi a breve, tra 2 giorni, in cui ci si attende che il Tribunale di Mosca praticamente liquidi questo sindacato, cioè l'obiettivo è farlo sparire in sostanza. So che alcuni dei vertici di questo sindacato, 2 persone in particolare che conosco bene, sono fuggite inizialmente in Francia perché uno di loro ha un passaporto francese, ma poi stanno tornando in Russia. Uno è già tornata e l'altro tornerà a breve in Russia, e non so come vedremo il 14 come sarà diciamo, questo processo, ma penso che finirà con la liquidazione definitiva di questo sindacato. Aggiungo che vi do questo dato che aveva la Federazione Europea dei Giornalisti in agosto, cioè nella sola Lettonia erano già fuggiti 200 giornalisti russi. Quindi immaginatevi, appunto si parlava prima di dati, è difficile averne, sapevamo dalla Lettonia che ce n'erano già 200 e che i servizi segreti lettoni avevano parlato con il governo lettone dicendo: state attenti perché tutti questi giornalisti che avete accolto possono costituire un problema per la Lettonia da parte della Russia. Quindi c'è anche stato questo, quindi vi do anche questa informazione. Aggiungo solo che ho parlato con una mia amica e collega esperta di Russia del Sole 24 Ore, Antonella Scott, che è andata 3 settimane in Russia ed è tornata ieri, l'altro sera. Mi ha telefonato ieri e mi ha detto, è stata anche a Novaya Gazeta quando hanno celebrato Anna Politkovskaya qualche giorno fa, ed è stata anche ai funerali di Gorbaciov. Ha detto che ai funerali di Gorbaciov è bastato che una signora piuttosto anziana tirasse fuori un foglio completamente bianco dove intendeva lasciare un messaggio, ma era un foglio bianco, ed è stata immediatamente allontanata dalle autorità dal funerale, è stata mandata via. Non è tanto il giornalismo normale che è morto, cioè i giornali locali ancora ovviamente scrivono notizie, ma tutto quello che riguarda la critica al governo e la critica e soprattutto la guerra è totalmente censurato. Io ho una cara amica, carissima amica, che era con me nel sindacato europeo, attivista russa, anche lei del giro un tempo di Novaya Gazeta, vedova di un leggendario giornalista russo morto, Nadezhda Agikina, e lei ci dice sempre che sono stati cancellati 30 anni della sua vita praticamente, ed è difficile, credo, per i giornalisti indipendenti sopravvivere non solo fuori dalla Russia, ma anche in Russia, poiché tutte le loro attività sono state completamente paralizzate. Quindi la situazione della censura è molto pesante, a quanto ne so, e appunto questo piccolo sindacato credo che sarà liquidato ben presto. Volevo dire appunto questo, non so se avete anche voi delle altre cose da chiedermi. Io a Oksana non chiedo nulla di quello più di quello che avete chiesto voi, perché credo che le vostre domande siano state esaustive e lei ci abbia dato veramente un'ampia, come dire, veramente un'ampia panoramica di quelle che sono le problematiche in Russia. E in Russia e anche fuori dalla Russia per gli esuli. Aggiungo solo che al sindacato russo è stata combinata, questo è il sindacato indipendente, una multa di 500 rubli, che non è poco, credo, per loro. E quindi, insomma, sono circa 8.000 euro, ma credo che per un sindacato così piccolo e indipendente, senza fonti, sia stata anche quella una mazzata non da poco. E Devo dire anche che l'avvocato del sindacato, del piccolo sindacato russo, ha detto anche che comunque, nonostante queste ultime leggi, siccome esiste ancora un articolo 29 della Costituzione russa che garantisce la libertà di pensiero, e non c'è scritto esattamente in una legge non devi dire qualcosa delle forze armate, cioè non ci sono proprio delle norme espresse, secondo questo avvocato, che vieterebbero quello che ha fatto il piccolo sindacato, sarebbe una condanna completamente illegale ed è anche un precedente perché viene chiusa proprio un sindacato e quindi sarebbe un precedente anche per la Russia, perché non è mai successo che per legge venga chiuso un sindacato. Vi ringrazio.
Grazie mille, Anna Del Freo, grazie mille per questo interessantissimo intervento. Grazie.
Actually, it's not just my opinion, but actually we discussed it with my colleagues, and with regard to kind of recommendation, how to behave, how to combat all that, because crazy things are being committed against freedom of thought, freedom of media by all possible sides right now, and the problems in Europe, so they also exist. Well, I do hope that there will be a way found to continue talking without the high level of emotions. We need to calm down. We need to we need not to shout in our media outlets, because the more we shout, the more blood is shed. And we should understand that, because we journalists influence public opinion a lot, and much depends on us.
Io volevo ringraziare Oksana, Anna Del Freo, Elisa Marincola, Stefano Corradino, Nicol Corritore, Eva Serio per averci, diciamo, aiutato in questa non facile traduzione, perché erano discorsi tecnici molto lunghi e sempre lei, diciamo, come attivista per Imbavagliati, responsabile della nostra compagine internazionale, per averci aiutato. E volevo dire ad Eva, thank you for her civil passion that make the world a better place. Thank you.